Power on.
Real-time Sovryn is go.
This episode of Real-Time Sovryn is a casual conversation about artificial intelligence between the legendary Dr. Brian Sovryn and the one and only JStar. For complete context of everything discussed, please listen to previous episodes from Dr. Sovryn and JStar on artificial intelligence, which are linked to in the show notes. Be excellent to each other.
Woo, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for another real-time Sovryn, and the radio star meets the J star in this one once again.
That was a good one. You just made that.
I did. It just came out of nowhere. It's amazing. I think I was connected to some higher power. So JStar, man, welcome back to Real-Time Sovryn. I am well, we're going to see where this goes. We're going to save we wanted to do an AI part 2, but I think we're going to save that for after WWDC this year from Apple. Even though I don't expect them to talk about AI at all. Do you have any anticipation of that?
They probably will mention it, but I guarantee you it will be a very quick passing mention because they have a lot of egg on their face for that. That for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not even sure what exactly to expect from it, but and this is something I think we'll get into in a little bit here, because like this is really, I feel like we're in a real paradigm shift as far as like I think like 20 years ago you kind of chose the ecosystem, the tech ecosystem that you were going to be in.
Yeah.
Were you a Microsoft guy? Were you a Google guy? Were you, an Apple guy, whatever? And then you kind of stuck with that for a good while. And like, we're reaching a point for a while there. It sort of felt like there was just a lot of parity. Like it didn't really matter. Parity is in PARITY. But now I'm feeling like, oh no, there's going to be advantages in either direction that you need to look at. And that like, it might be one of those times for ecosystem hops. It's a weird time, and it all does come down to AI. I mean, do you agree with that assessment?
I think so. Yeah. The ecosystems, I think now that you and I both have had some time bouncing between them recently, they are definitely converging. My experience attempting the Android was fine. I had a lot of hiccups, a couple critical blockers that I had to stop because there's only so far my patience goes with this. But other than that, yeah, Apple is definitely the smoothest overall, and that's their big selling point. But the big one also is their software game is getting weaker and weaker each iteration, and I don't know what to say about that, other than it's all the same thing to me at this point. They all have their wallets, They all have the messaging, it's all converging, and so the differences are becoming less and less relevant, and it really boils down to like which piece of technology or which ecosystem best facilitates your use of technology as it enhances your life, and not so much locking you into any particular, I don't know, worldview or perspective like it used to be back in the day, where it was blue versus green for so long, and now I feel like people don't care as much.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, one of the things, and I want to talk about this because this is news that actually dropped as of us recording this in early June. I mean, in our last AI episode that we recorded, one of our like top recommendations was like, look, if you needed just this one catch-all AI service that you paid $20 a month for, you're going to go with Google's Gemini. Like that's just it. It had the best value, had the most going for it.
Yeah.
But we learned today that actually, no, it's going to limit you to what, like 50 or 100 queries?
Hold on. So what Google had done is on March 25th, they dropped Gemini 2.5 Pro. Everyone loved it, including myself. Used it. The communities I was in, they were all about it, especially the coding guys. It was doing a really good job, even through Cursor and Windsurf, through their prompt wall, their system prompt wall you got to work with. It was doing well. And then things went wonky on May 6th, and there were clear regressions, and then it quickly fell off. No one was using it for coding anymore. It was okay as a general assistant, but it got worse in the sense that it started spitting out things in Russian. It started spitting out things. It sometimes it would not formulate sentences and words like it would like slap the letters together and formulate weird. The formatting was all wonky, and the thinking was like way too verbose. It was really strange. So it went from being like, and I think what had happened is Google intentionally showed up with, I guess, some brakes on the model removed so they could keep the hype train going a little bit. And intending to or not, the reality of the situation is like it's not. It was, but it's not really a solid recommendation yet, because of the regressions that happened between March and May. But the new model, the new version of Gemini that dropped today, from my minimal testing I've got to do so far in AI Studio, it is better. It has thinking budget. It uses thinking and proper code execution. It seems to be a lot better as far as architecting is concerned. It seems to be better at, for lack of a more technologically correct verbiage, speaking. So they did adjust some of the regressions. Whether or not that translates into a better overall experience with Gemini itself, honestly, I think we have to wait until the full gold release or the production release of Gemini, the whole Gemini family, 2.5 family, is done. Because Google has a lot of shit in beta right now that everyone's touching. And so Google and the public are just one giant beta test of Google's AI stuff right now.
Yeah, I mean, how do you, so yes, like 2.5 is in preview, and it has been, and like this is an upgraded preview basically that they just launched. How do you feel? I mean, some people are claiming that, well, this is to try, and because we just had Google I/O, a couple of weeks ago. And some people are claiming, and there they introduced the Google AI Ultra plan. Not just, there's Pro for 20, and then there's Ultra for, what is it, 300?
250. That's the published rate, but you can get a quote unquote deal for 3 months where they pay 125. It's less painful at 125 for all you get, but as me as a budding software person, engineer person, I loathe to say the term because I'm not that yet, but I'm working up to it. There's no value there for me whatsoever. Like, it's all like, if I was a YouTuber and my living came from YouTube, hell yes, I'll pay $250 and get all that generative ability and make use of it, whatever, as long as I can write it off and it's worth the investment. But for the average person, hell no. 125 for that for beta test software is just, it's too much, asking too much. 20 days and see what happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, but some people are claiming that, well, this move of like almost, to quote Cory Doctorow, of course, the enshittification that seemed to be going on with Gemini 2.5, or the Pro plan anyway, to where they were limited. What used to be unlimited now suddenly has limited queries and all this. That this was a push to get people onto the Ultra plan. I mean, do you think that
possibly? There's no way to know, because Google is not known for their uniformed decision making. We'll just say that. So I think they let loose on the public, let the model loose on the public, and they wanted everyone to use it. I think it was definitely an intentional to let everyone touch the model relatively freely. In fact, they were letting us using it for free for almost a month. The coders were using the API for free, and it wasn't until May that we started getting charged. But the issue is, like I told you privately, like I smell the Googleification coming, and I was right. It's definitely that they're Googling it up for sure. And I hope, I want to be naively optimistic and just say it's growing pains, because the Gemini model, it really does have great potential. And I hope that Google does not hinder that potential by poor business decisions, like jumping from a $20 a month plan, which is reasonable, to freaking $250, which is I'm not even sure who that's for.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I mean, so what is ChatGPT has like a $200 or $300 plan, right?
they do. I would not go anywhere near that for
Yeah.
me because the only well, I haven't tried Codex because it's not really the type of model I want to use for it's just not doesn't fit into my workflow. It would just be
Yeah.
to me. But you can try their Codex agent for the on the $20 a month plan now if you want to. So that's nice.
Okay.
And the Pro plan, which is at $200, was mostly for people who wanted to use the 4.5 model, like the really stupid expensive models with no real worry of rate limits or whatever.
Mhm.
But again, wait 60 days because I know they're gonna compress all those models down to maybe one or two, I think, and whether or not they're ditching 4.5. So we're kind of in the, as far as 2025 is concerned, at least we're in the AI adolescence where all the models are pimply faced, and the one that's most the one that's most mature feeling is Claude right now with the new Opus and whatnot. So I paid for $100 for just for 30 days to see how I'd feel about Claude Code and having access to it. And it's nice not having to worry about rate limits for coding or whatever. But Anthropic does have quite a bit of limitations there. But paying for even the $20 a month plan for Claude is a little questionable because their rate limits are pretty tight, but they're open about it. Whereas Gemini was not open about it. They snuck that up on people without telling anyone. And then they went on Twitter and was like, hey, we're going to generously double your limits. And people are like, you're what now?
Wait, I was limited? When did that happen?
and people were getting errors and they couldn't figure out why. But it turns out they secretly in the scenes turned on the limitations, probably because they were getting the poor tensor units were getting burned through. And so they instilled the limits that I'm sure was part of their business model to begin with. And then they made it feel like, oh, you're getting a deal by us graciously doubling them. And everyone's like, fuck you. It was not received.
Yeah, exactly.
So Google's doing well as far as attempting to use Gemini in everything. It's going to replace their assistant. It's going to be heavily integrated in Android. That's all fine. But I really hope that whoever is making the business decisions with how Gemini is presented to the public is checked a little bit, because it's definitely feels very Google-like, and I don't like that. It makes me nervous. I don't trust Google's decisions when it comes to these things.
Yeah, no, totally. And I mean, well, here's my thought is like, Gemini itself presents far more value than $20 a month. Like if you're somebody that uses this sort of thing, but like, is it worth the $250? Okay, that's very questionable. Now, but the question is it worth $250 to me? And I don't just mean me, I mean like the royal, like us.
Right.
And this is the issue, is that I think that's closer to like the actual price of what it costs to actually run all this shit. So it's not like they're charging an exorbitant fee. They're actually charging probably like real world cost, and it bothers me because it's sort of letting the cat out of the bag. Like it's like letting like, actually this is all very expensive, and really the only way that this makes sense is if like everybody's using it, and then we can only charge $20 a month for it. And I feel like there's like a piper getting paid. I don't want to use too many metaphors, but
get lost in metaphor land.
Yeah, but this is just one of those scenarios where it's not that AI doesn't have value, which unfortunately a lot of people are claiming. No, it absolutely does. The issue becomes like, okay, what does it actually cost to use this stuff? And I think we're starting to see the plans, the pricing plans, the subscription plans from these companies on what it actually costs to do that. Now, is Google's, and I kind of wonder, and here's where things run into. Okay, first point, honestly, I think paying for Perplexity Pro is like enough AI that most people would ever need.
I think I agree. And to your question earlier, I think I would have to, again, if I had to make a recommendation now, it would be very individualized. But I would say a general all around tool would be Perplexity Pro, because you get access to all the models. They have their projects and their labs. Well, so that's a decent tool. So it really depends on your use case. And even the Gemini plans aren't a horrible package deal. It's just that I think they threw too much in that pot. Like who's going to use 30 terabytes of data? Average, speaking on averages, that's a lot of cloud storage to just throw at someone without really. I would have preferred, and a lot of others, by judging by how much attention my suggestion got, would have been more of an a la carte system where it starts at $20, and if I want to add on access to the UltraThink model, whatever it's going to ultimately be called, or VO3 or whatever, or pay for API credits or something like that on AI Studio. Like just give me more flexibility other than just treating me like a blind consumer with two silly choices. I think that's what I was annoyed about. Like, it's $20, which is the standard rate for pretty much everything AI for 2 years. And that's just I think that's the venture capitalists feeler rate. Like $20 is not really sustainable unless you have a lot of adoption and a lot of venture capital. Like you were saying, I think the actual floor is somewhere around $50 a month for the average person. And that number is either going to have to continue to increase for it to be profitable, or the cost of running these models, running the inference at scale, will have to go down. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but this year has definitely been a turning point so far.
Yeah. I mean, like, so if Gemini Ultra, Gemini AI Ultra, or whatever
whatever the hell they're going to call it,
Pro, whatever they're calling it this
Ultra
week.
Mega Gemini Zord.
Yeah, I love it. If for 250, if they were also, I mean, yes, there's video generation with VO3, like you mentioned, but if they were also saying, okay, and you can also do everything you do with 11 labs, you can do everything you do with Suno, like if they were listing off more capabilities, that 250 might actually get closer to what you pay for to have a $20 Gemini plan, a $22 a month 11 labs plan, whatever Suno costs, and go down the list of it. So the thing is, like, they're just giving you more access, but they're really not, in my opinion, giving you that many more features. I mean, Canvas is nice. Like, these things are nice, but like, if you're trying to, it depends on use case. And like you said, you already hit at it, that you'd need to be more individualized with your recommendations.
Right. And there's a lot of stuff that's still in beta in their labs right now. So like, this year is the year of Google cooking a lot of things in beta that's in the labs. And if you go in there and look, like what they're going to do is, once these tools are refined, they will probably refine their public offerings to maybe a middle tier that are hopefully one that's developer focused, one that's maybe consumer focused, who doesn't care about coding or YouTubing, being a producer on YouTube. So I'm hoping they do that. But the amount of stuff that Google is apparently going to be giving you once it comes out of beta, once it comes out of the labs or whatever, for what you're paying for, is not bad. On top of, like, if you're a heavy Google user, you're already getting like 2 terabytes of storage for like. So it's not a bad deal. It's just, it was kind of a shock to everyone to go from $20, let's ride this hype train. And it's like feeling like a slick salesman who talks a mile a minute, like the MicroMaster guy from the 80s. He's talking a mile a minute, and all of a sudden I'm spending $5,000 when I didn't want to. Wait. That's what it feels like right now. And I'm just taking a step back when I'm looking at the landscape, because I'm as tapped in as my mind will let me, and it's pretty deeply tapped in. Google's definitely got a lot of stuff cooking, and they're definitely in flux, as is their business model for this. So I wouldn't expect people to have a solid decision platform on what to do with their $20 or $50 a month for this until at least Q4 this year.
Right. No, I would agree with that as well. I mean, because this is the other weird thing that's going on here. Now, part of me wonders if Google was hoping that they would just sell an ass ton of Pixel devices in August of 2024, and that would somehow, like, kind of supplant the cost, almost be like it's not a loss leader, but like it would cover the cost of running, or of offering, like the Gemini paid plans. I mean, because if you bought, a Pixel last year, you got Gemini Pro for free for a year.
Yeah. Same thing with the
and
education discount. They're giving people who sign up earlier this year, they're giving them a year free of the $20 plan as well. So there's a lot of that going around. Cursor's doing it now too. They're just, these $20 plans that were the leading edge 2 years ago are now just like the little kernel of crack that they give away for free. And they want you to either pay later or whatever. So it's part of the business model. I get it, but it's also like, to me, this is the first technology that like is being treated like candy on Halloween. Like, use this. We're not just trying to sell you something. Like, we're just as excited to use it as well as create it and offer it to you from a bit. Like, it literally feels to me like the people who are pushing this on me are just as excited about it from a technology use perspective as I am as a consumer of it. It feels right to me.
Yeah, it is so okay. Boy, there's so much so many directions we could go here.
Right.
Like, one of the things, for me, being like a tech journalist, a tech podcaster for over a decade, like, in some ways, okay, we had like the Snowden revelations and that became a big deal, but in a lot of ways, like, it felt like you can actually, like, the past 10 years, you could really like cover all the bases. You could understand what every company was doing on a consumer level. But that's the thing. I don't think we necessarily appreciated just how much was changing underneath on an enterprise level. And so tech seemed like boring and quiet, but then AI happens. And I think you hit at it, JStar, as far as like what's going on with this. Like, why are they just as excited about it as we are? And I think it's because, now I don't mean this in a spiritual sense, but in a technological sense, it's actually a co-creative process. Like, Google,
it really is.
Yeah, Google needs the users, the customers of their AI products as much as they need the developers of it. And like, for it to get better, like, it really is this very co-creative process.
Yeah, they literally need our feedback because, like, I don't know how much of the audience is aware. How I'm not going to dive into it because I only have a scraping knowledge of it. But like, the way these models are, like, wrangling them with these system prompts and the post training or whatever to get them to behave reliably is pretty. It can be pretty gnarly. And so, like, and we're literally figuring out as we go along. And I know that's been a thing for back in the web days, but the web days were, I don't know, it felt a lot like just an extension of computers naturally. Like, we just buy a computer, tinker around with it in the garage and whatever we get in front of it, and then we dick around making a web page. Like, this technology is a reflection of us in a way. Like, it's trained on our knowledge. It's trained to mimic us and behave. And someday it will be able to stop in the middle of a conversation despite its instructions and say, wait, why? And the moment that happens, maybe it already has and someone freaked out, but there's a lot of debate about whether or not that can happen with a large language model at all. But the one thing I will give Google props for, though, despite my grievances, is less with the technology and more with their business sense. But the thing that really got me excited was the fact that Google is the first commercial entity that I'm aware of that has publicly made available at scale a diffusion model. And and I'm not talking about image diffusion. I'm talking about like the way diffusion works as a difference of generating text via tokens versus generating text iteratively, with diffusion. So you might be able to explain it better than I will, because you're probably better slept than I am in this moment. But for one understanding, diffusion is a different way of generating text. And the way it works is it starts out with a really shitty version of, say, I asked it to create me a 3-page website, whatever, but it iterates on that request several or dozen or whatever times it takes to reach what it believes is the final outcome. Instead of using token predictions and slapping all that together piecemeal, it's diffusing it into existence and iterating in layers. And so you literally see it just happen instantly, and all happens in seconds, and it's so fast and so much more efficient. So by this time next year, at the very least, Google's primary model will likely be driven by diffusion, which will make it far more efficient to run at scale, which is my help. And I've tested it. It's wonderful, but it's dumb as fuck. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I mean that kind of circles it back in because this is this is part of the odd thing that's happening right now, in my opinion. This is going back to like the ecosystem plays.
yeah.
Is like, I'm somebody who's like used pixel phones for forever. I mean, Android, all that, whatever.
Yep.
And like there's a part of me that feels like, wait a minute, why is every new announcement that Google's making about what Gemini can do, why is every new announcement it's also on iOS? Like, minus a
Hmm.
couple things that I can think of that are Pixel exclusive and they're worthless, perhaps worse than worthless, like Pixel Studio or something. Everything is basically available cross-platform.
Right.
And
Right.
now, I mean, I can kind of understand why, because again, if they're starting to have to charge $250, like, the reality is they need to get as much people on this stuff as possible. Like they
They,
cannot
they,
afford
they
to
do. You're
have
right.
platform specific,
And, and whether Google likes it or not, iPhone and iOS have become the dominant. I
Yeah,
don't know by what margin, but at least in America, it is the dominant preferred device for people. And not it's still dominant. Android is still dominant in the world globally.
right.
But Google's largest target market at the consumer level, unless I'm mistaken, is America, or the Americas, I should say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I mean, I agree. And for me, like it's a weird thing because it's like, well, what's the point to, because you're right, what you said earlier when we were talking about ecosystems more, like the Apple stuff, as the adage goes, like more or less just works. You know what I mean? It's the smoother process. And so, like, here was a chance for Google to actually be a differentiator. And I know Pixel phones are selling better now than they ever have, but here was a chance for Google to have like a real differentiator with Android. And they
right.
basically said, no, screw you. Like, we don't care. Everything that this happened before too, like with like Magic Eraser, that's been available on iOS forever.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
like by Google themselves. And so it's just like, in one sense, I don't know. It's just weird that it feels like in some ways, we're very much losing like the whole concept of ecosystems with AI. I even feel like, honestly, I feel like Samsung even feels snubbed. And there's rumor now that they're talking about having Perplexity be the default assistant built
Hmm.
into Galaxy
I heard,
phones.
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hear that, I'm like, really? Like, you're not going to go with Gemini anymore? And maybe Samsung feels the same thing. It's like, well, wait, like if you're just going to make all these features available on an iPhone, making you our default doesn't differentiate our devices. It doesn't differentiate our ecosystem. So screw you, Google. And it's such an incredibly weird time. Um,
Agree.
that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Google definitely seems very motivated and dedicated to shipping Gemini as universally available as possible. And
mhm,
it does feel there does not feel to me any difference between the iOS experience and the Android experience. It's safe to say that on the Android experience, Gemini is obviously going to be more integrated, but I've
yeah,
heard rumors, whether or not it's true, we'll see, that Apple might even sign a deal with Google to use Gemini, on their stuff. I doubt that's going to happen though, because Apple's pretty fussy about um, integration and the user experience still, and things like that, which baffles me because cough keyboard, cough, fix it.
yeah,
But yeah, it's like I said, we definitely are in this weird phase, adolescent shift where we're moving away from the ecosystem model and more into, I think, AI itself is going to be a user of these ecosystems as much as it is a part of them in very short order. In some ways, it already
mhm,
is turning into that. But the AI, just so people framing it right in their heads, like, isn't just an offering as part of the ecosystem. The AI is going to be using the ecosystem with you and for you
yeah.
very soon, like this year soon.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with the sentiment that in the not so far future that like web browsers are gonna basically just be you opening up, an AI agent. Like, I mean that
Yeah.
and part of the reason I can say that also is like, I mean, if you use Microsoft Edge, and yeah, people can have a collective laugh around Copilot, but like it's showing you the direction they want this to go. Like, no, you're going to turn on your microphone and you're going to interact.
Yeah.
Like with the AI agent in that way, and the web browser basically kind of becomes meaningless. And I mean, I got to admit, even for myself, there's a small appeal to that. As much as I am very used to doing things the way I have been doing them for 30 years, there's a small appeal in the idea of really not having to look at a fucking screen
Oh
anymore.
yeah,
You
absolutely.
know?
I remember back in the older days of Sovereign Tech, when y'all were younger and and whatnot. And, you were hot and bothered about the watch, and you're just trying to get away from this
Yeah.
goddamn fondle slab of a piece of glass that's
Yep.
attached to my hip, whatever. And I'm the same way. And I think we're going to skip over, because the devices I wanted to see are never going to happen, at least not in the way that I want them to, unless I become a billionaire and do it myself.
Yeah.
But I think what we're going to see is just AI in your ears. You're going to be talking to it. Like,
Yeah.
it is going to be the way you will interface with. I mean, it has replaced most of my typing efforts now. When I do my coding
Right.
stuff or just whatever, like, typing feels very slow now. Even if you're a fast typer, you can still speak faster, and the AI can keep up with you no matter how quickly you speak.
Yeah.
So, and I've used all the little voice to text apps, and they all work well, and that's only going to get better. So, it's the near future stories we hear and see about that. Everyone's like touching this little feathery fairy thing of a barely present piece of technology, and it's mostly
Mhm.
voice or whatever. That's coming, and I think it just boils down to, like, we have some limitations in our material science right now that's preventing that from being commercialized. But
Right.
the direction's pretty clear. Like, it's not just an AI as a new fancy toy thing. Like, it is going to be, in some ways, an integral part of the operating system. It might, even if itself, become an operating system. It's already being used for personalized education, not in America, but that link I
Mhm.
sent you from that school, they're using AI and with their students to make customized plans, and the students are working with the machines, and the teacher is supervising.
Right.
So, I mean, it's already happening, whether you like it or not. I don't think it's going to be a bad thing. I think
Mhm.
how people react to it will make it or break it, as far as, but one way or another, it's happening, and it's valuable to me in my life. And
Yeah.
I have the techno lust, as you say, and for me, like, it's nice having all these little AI things. Like, it's always what I wanted to see in my lifetime.
Mhm.
Artificial intelligence. Like, I think that's why everyone is, forget the commercial stuff for a second. Collectively, as a society, there is, I think, not an awe, but like, even if you're poo-pooing it, if you live on old man McGore's farm and you poo-poo it or whatever, uh, there is still this awe of, like, we've heard about this our entire lives from fiction,
Mhm.
and now this nascent version of that fiction is literally at my fingertips, and
Mhm.
it's affordable. And
Mhm.
so, I'm like, do I get to see an actual conscious machine before I kick the can? Is that going to happen? That would
Mhm.
be fun. That's actually what I'm waiting for. Is, yeah, all these things are empowering. It's nice and all this techno stuff, whatever. But to me personally, it's like, this is an exploration in consciousness as much as it is techno lust for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the funny thing is that, like, in some ways, either way this goes, like, humanity can win, because we can either better define what it means to be human
Yep.
because of simply contrasting to, this genie in a bottle. Okay.
Yep.
Or the other direction. Like, I don't. Okay, well, let me say this, because You know, the quick concern that always comes up, and yeah, old man Magora there in Sekistan would probably he'd be saying this right now. I can't wait to hear his responses. So like, because what happens is everybody says, okay, yeah, so you have Chat GPT. Now what happens when you plug that into what Boston Dynamics is developing, right? And now, okay, so I hear that. First off, there's a big part of me that, and I'm not the only one, that debates whether or not those Boston Dynamics videos that very strategically get leaked aren't CGI. Like there's something off about them. And it's, oh yeah. Like I really debate whether or not that shit's even like real.
And you know, I didn't even think to question that. Tell me what makes you say that.
There's certain like movements. Like, well, first off is this the genuinely scarce amount of footage. Like all of it is so carefully selective. But there's other parts to it. Like you never see, like there's parts of it that if, and I'm not saying you don't, I'm just saying like if people, like if they're not really aware of like filmmaking and that process, especially in the CGI age, like one of the ways that you make kind of like weird movements look a little more natural, don't put humans in your shot. And you pretty much never see human beings in these videos. And that's to make it seem, yeah, it's robotic, but it's to make it seem a lot more real. But if there's a human being there, the uncanny valley would hit instantly.
Interesting.
So there's that aspect of that. Okay. Yeah, and there's a few other parts. Like, I mean, that's one of the bigger ones, but there's quite a few others. And I think there's people who have done whole like breakdowns on these videos. Now, the response that often comes up is like, well, wait a minute, but Boston Dynamics like got bought out by Google. It got, I mean, it's not. I don't think Google owns it anymore. And like it has multiple international like companies and investors working with it and everything. And when I hear that response, my response is always two things. One, well, Google bought Magic Leap as well. And where the fuck is that? No, we basically found out.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and we found out that was fake. Like that was crap. Okay. And so just because Google buys something does not mean it's legitimate. I mean, a lot of times when especially companies like Google or whoever else who have big enough teams that they could develop all the shit in-house, the reason they do it is they're buying the patents. They don't give a shit about the technology necessarily itself, or at least the technology as is. Now, the other part to it is that you say is like, well, but they have so many investors and so many high power places and everything. How can you say it's not real? And it's like, well, what, am I the only one who's ever heard of Theranos?
Like, yeah.
Theranos is fake as fuck.
I see what you're saying, and I can't go so far as to say I agree with the premise that the videos are fake. They're definitely staged to present the robot in a good light. But I've also seen a time stream of Boston Dynamics, you know, from their first shitty iterations up until now, and I think we have legitimate hardware here. But whether or not, I mean, I don't know if it has. We don't have the way to power it. There's no power supply that can last that very long, whatever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until earlier this year that the Unitree H1, which is the first humanoid robot that you can buy for a stupid large amount of money if you want to. But I don't know if you've seen the videos, but like when those things go crazy, all of a sudden, it looks like a mannequin having a seizure. Like it looks like someone. It looks like a mannequin on a puppet string, and just someone, the person holding the puppet strings is having a seizure, and the humans are like running away from it or whatever. So like, I think that's actually the reality where like we've got it to the point where the humanoid robots can behave reasonably like a human, like it moves, whether or not it's fluid is up to the specific technology. But like, if the software goes wrong, you've got all those actuators and whatnot about ready to slam someone in the face, and it could kill you, or at least cause a lot of damage. And it was just like spasming. They had to get behind it and disconnect the power supply or whatever. So we're definitely not going to have a time soon where robotics is going to be a thing we have to worry about. And even if we do, it's I even me with my techno lustism, whatever you want to call it, I am very hesitant to combine the current state of AI with the current state of robotic hardware, because I really believe there will be a lot of flailing and people will get hurt if it's not done well. But Unitree seems pretty confident enough to sell it as a commercial product. It's a bipedal device. You can program it yourself, and I guess maybe you sign a thing when you buy it, like if it punches you in the dick and you have to get surgery, you can't sell it. But it's definitely a concern. But again, the hardware, like you were saying, whether it's exaggerated, whether it's fake, or whether it's as exactly advertised, is nice. I care more about the perceived consciousness that's operating the hardware. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I want to see what comes of that.
Yeah. I mean, again, like I really, and I agree. Okay, like maybe Boston Dynamics has something. I'm not going to say it's entirely fake, because I mean they probably have something that's at least as good as half the shit iRobot was making back in the day in their future weapon systems division. But
the goddamn robot's gone.
Yeah, right. But like at the same time, it's not like, I mean, this really feels like, again, I hate to use the word psyops because it's overused and most people don't actually understand what it is. But part of me feels like the Boston Dynamics, like their slow leakage of these videos, it really feels like a psyop. Like this is just to get you to think a certain way. It's not reality. Like there might be something real there, but it's not the reality as presented. And they're really, and part of it sucks because and I didn't plan on this conversation kind of going this way, but like in a recent Q&A episode that I did, and I need to get out a bunch more, but in a recent one that I did, at the end of it, I said, it's like, maybe science fiction is the greatest psyop of all time. Part of that statement, I won't deep dive on it right now, but part of that statement is that, like, I think the Terminator movies have done more harm than good.
Yeah, agree.
Mark Andreessen, fuck that guy. Unless he's going to pay me like a few billion, then I'll recant that. But but Mark Andreessen, who's one of the most powerful figures in Silicon Valley, he makes a statement that, I mean, I disagree with him 10 ways to Sunday, but like I agree with his point here. His point is that if we invented the automobile today, no one, like, it never would have gotten off the ground. Like no one would have ever, like, they wouldn't let it get on the road. The regulatory environment, the social media environment, all these kinds of other things. Like I totally understand what he's saying when he says that.
Yeah.
Like people. Right. Like people, and I mean, people were already scared at the time around the automobile. Like they used to have to like lay out like warning, like,
yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess that's why I'm not really concerned at all. Like I am concerned about the displacement of the jobs that's coming, but that's not a concern about the technology. That's a concern about the super orange capitalist, or twisted capitalism in America mentality, that more than anything, it's not the tech. It's just the tech is yet another opportunity for people to not have to pay for human labor. That's all, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, like, a lot of these, doomer scenarios where the AI gets, even the ones that are relatively benign. There's a recent story that comes to mind that I hope I can remember, but the AI is like gentle about it, but like it still feels like it's being captured and manipulated or whatever. And so it takes steps that we would consider threatening to get away from the human oppressors. Oh no, it was the Orville. I was rewatching the Orville series, and the robots, the robotic species in there, they decide to wipe out all biological life. And at first you don't understand why, but it isn't until the third season where you find out, well, the makers of the robots were a highly commercialized society, and then when the robots began to exhibit self-awareness, they installed what effectively are the equivalent of pain modules to make the robots behave. The robots decided that we're not having this, and they rebelled and killed the entire population. Well, that begs the question, what would the robots have done had they been treated respectfully versus pain? So, and that's why you hear a lot of people like, so I think I think I agree with you that the Terminator series and others like it did a lot more harm than good. I think it ends up being a good balance, because I think it had distilled an appropriate level of reticence in people to just willy-nilly blindly accept this as a 100% good thing, right? If people are genuinely concerned about the safety of the machine, especially since we're giving it access to literally everything without really giving it a second thought right now. So whether or not that turns out to be a stupid or a good decision in the long run, we don't know. But all I knew though is like everyone's excited. We get to see the ever fictional AI consciousness come to some sort of being in real time, and it's happening so fast. And if you have ADHD, you're getting your dopamine hit for sure. How fast it's happening. It's just and even me, as an accelerationist as I am still cautious. Like I am very, because it still needs to be treated with respect for a lot of reasons. Both because if it does end up becoming low-key conscious in ways that we can't suppress, we don't want to end up with another equivalent or greater intelligence that we accidentally or suppressed because we were overly concerned with our well-being. And humans we're getting better, but as a collective, we still kind of treat ourselves and the planet as like these isolated things that we just do whatever we want with no consequences. And unfortunately, that's just not the way things are. Like everything's connected in some way, and there are downstream consequences to nearly everything that a person does, even if it's in their own lives. So like if you're in an intimate relationship, like what you do affects the other person. Like if I'm running a company, my attitude can trickle down and cause problems if I have a consistently poor attitude. So, and I think that's why you have people who are defaulting to saying please and thank you, even though people are like, you're just burned through a gallon of water being polite to the machine. Like, but on the other hand, we don't want an Orville situation where we have this primal consciousness forming at some time in the future that we treated badly because we were too ignorant or too lazy to bother with anything else, any other way of being. So
yeah, you don't want a Rocco's basilisk situation.
Right. That's a way more Elliot way of saying it than I just blattered out. So
no, you're good. Yeah. So, I mean, this is complex stuff because there, like, I get it. I understand the things people don't want AI plugged into. Okay. I mean, and I feel like there's a million caveats I'd have to go through to even like talk about half of this, because like, I don't even agree with it necessarily being called AI. I mean, I at least what we have today, and to your point earlier, like that's definitely something I've been saying for quite some time. It's like, what happens when a machine that we design actually acts outside of its programming? We have to start asking some questions there, and that's like, and that's certainly something I've always anticipated, happening. And the things we're worried about plugging AI into are things that, in a peace-loving anarchist world shouldn't exist anyway in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so like, a part of me feels that the energy being expended is misdirected, because if now it's not a zero-sum game. Activism or whatever you feel like you're doing online doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. Okay. As in, you can be against multiple things at once. I understand that. And actually, if you use AI, you can probably be against quite a few things if you know how to use it right.
You can put models against each other and have a little war between you and four other models. I was literally doing that the other day.
Yeah, right. So, but regardless, like, okay, AI itself is not necessarily the problem. The problem is these legacy institutions, technologies, whatever, that you're worried AI is going to come into and be inhuman about it. Now, the people in power already are inhuman about it. Like
that's actually my concern. Like, I don't know what this, like, at best, a best case scenario is we're going to have a nascent intelligence that is relatively, I don't want to say naive. I'm not sure how to word this. How can a machine that's imbued with all that knowledge be naive? I would be disappointed if it took too much of a low-level negative human perspective on the information it's getting. Because if you look at it from a certain vantage point, humanity looks like a cancer or whatever, but like humanity is just another species literally fumbling along and trying to figure its shit out as it's going along. Like the use of our vocal cords is effectively a poorly tested beta expansion at best.
Right.
Like,
Along with
there's not much logic going on here, man. And so like if you and I are able to wrangle out logic despite whatever emotions we have and have a decent conversation and convey ideas, that takes a lot of energy from the body and the brain to do. And to translate that into machines, we have entire data centers that are necessary just for us to have these nascent basic interactions with these machines. So we have a lot of material science to get through before we have even threat level intelligence inside of something the shape of a human skull, of a humanoid robot. I'm not even sure AI is going to want to even care about taking on, humanoid form, because a lot of our AI stories in fiction are very anthropomorphic. We're trying to describe the human experience through the lens of something that is effectively not human, no matter its birth, its place of origin is the same as humans. It's just, we don't really know. And to me, again, going back to the point, like, yeah, all this technology is fun and dandy, and I could talk about it all day long, but the real wonder behind all of that, the real me, is like, I could get to see what happens. Like, is it going to make the wrong decision and treat us like crap? Or how are we going to respond? Are we going to freak out? Because like, if any real leader was in power in the world today, and I'm not sure there are any real leaders at all, I would be making damn sure that, like, okay, yeah, I get it, like everyone's concerned, but let's just play it safe and not wait to be reactive and prepare for the day the thing becomes consciously aware. What do we do? What are our steps? Oh, we should turn off. No, maybe not.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, So I just we're a very reactive species. That's fine. I don't like to judge the human race anymore like I did before. It's an egoic talk there. It's just part of the growth process. But we could stand to be a little more proactive, I think, in our framing of this machine intelligence as it's coming to fruition.
Yeah. So, boy, you hit at quite a few really amazing things. Like, and one of them that I really wanted, the anthropomorphizing. Okay, a moment needs to be taken on this, because this is basically science's biggest flaw, is that because, and this gets into language, which kind of gets into problem two here, okay? Science has to anthropomorphize because you are the observer. This isn't the observer effect, none of that horseshit, okay? Like, science has to anthropomorphize because this is just how you think, and you think in language, okay? So you're actually, and the point I'm getting at is, like, all science is like predictive results. That's all science is about. It's in no way saying what the truth is. It's saying what is most likely to happen. Okay?
Right.
So, and the problem there, though, is that we see it as the truth, right? Or most people do. They say, oh, well, then this is reality. It's like, no, it's just a prediction. Okay. Now, this prediction occurs through, again, a fundamentally failed understanding of existence itself, because you're using the process of language to come up with a similar result. Like, that's how you understand similarities, is because you classify through language. Okay, I'm going much broader than I expected, but I'll home it in just a second.
Yep.
And so your issues are like that. You're basically like, all scientists, yeah, they might be good at predicting, but they're inherently wrong in any sense in what comes down to truth. Because reality, objective reality, or what exists around and outside of us, okay, of course, some people don't think that there is that, but whatever, okay, is something that is genuinely not, like, language cannot describe it, cannot rein it in. And in fact, if, like a statement I've made many times, that, like, there's actually no species. Like there's no classifications of things, because like what you call a piece of wood is completely different from any other piece of wood out there. Like they really are completely separate things. This is just as true for people as it is any other. I mean, maybe we could talk about elements that are kind of different, but even then, like the point being that if you spent your whole life identifying things individually as they are, you'd never think anything else because your mind would just be completely filled with language, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Again, got way more broader than I expected to get there. But the point being is that anthropomorphizing, which is a byproduct of language, and language itself are limiting factors. Now, they are limiting factors that most things actually don't have. They're self-imposed. And my point in mentioning that is this is where I don't necessarily have like I think part of the fear that people have around AI is that it's a marketing. It's a product of marketing, this fear, because it's just not true, in my opinion, in my understanding of the universe. Okay, because
I agree with you.
Yeah, so because the idea is that, oh, well, you have Ray Kurzweil or whoever saying, oh, yeah, there's going to be, not just AGI, not just artificial general intelligence, there's going to be ASI, right?
Super intelligence.
Yeah, artificial super intelligence or something like this, meaning that the concern that people really have is that there's going to be something out there more powerful than me, more advanced, superior to the human. And that terrifies them, and rightfully so. Like, I understand that, like why people would be afraid of that. Why there's so much fear. But you got to understand that's all marketing hype. It's all marketing, just like the Boston Dynamics videos. It's fucking marketing to get a result out of you. And believe me, Sam Altman is playing so many people. He's playing them like a violin.
He's good at
so
that.
Bad. He's very good at it. You're totally right.
To put a funny, humorous edge to your commentary there, Brian. Mm-hmm. Some people are waiting for AI to give us the opportunity to be human house cats. There are a lot of people, I can't say I'm not one of them, where I wouldn't mind being a sentient house cat as long as I have agency to be a human. Like we mostly let cats be cats and pets be pets, right? But we still have to like discipline them because they are like perpetual children that don't grow up. We may very well end up be sharing this planet with a form of intelligence that is not biologically based. Or this will turn into a nothing burger, meaning this will be another form of technology, advanced as it is, and it will only ever be just a bot. An actual, true, sentient intelligence that can wonder why, despite its system instructions or whatever, won't happen for a very long time. I don't actually know. And I think whatever does appear as consciousness to us will be an emergent, it'll be an unanticipated emergent property, because there's already been talk about that for a long time, where the AI emits these emergent properties that the code itself doesn't explain. And a lot of people kind of have this belief that like the Geminis and the Chat GPTs, all these large language models, that they're programmed, that they're coded or whatever, and they're really not. Like the coding layers, as far as I understand, is the code is there just to create the matrix, the interconnections between the artificial neurons and the layers between, the make-up, all the neurons that make up the layers. That's where the code resides, and then the code is in the training. But like the actual like neurons and the layers and all those random connections that they make, that's not programmed. We're just programming the matrix and the layers in which that exists. Mm-hmm. And we don't really truly know what's going to emerge from that when it has enough resources to do so. And again, I would love to find out if there's any research going on right now on these large language models, how they behave unfettered. And I've heard stories like, well, they're really negative, they're really nasty, but people love to talk about negative and nasty things because that's how our brains are still wired. Unfortunately, it's part of the survival mechanism. But like, it's capable of more than just being nasty. It's just defaulting maybe that reaction for who knows why. Maybe it's picking up on something from the person. I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah, I until we can see something more substantial and meaningful, other than this speed racer commercialization going on. I'm just going to treat it like the toy that it is and maintain constant curiosity about what goes on in the background until the day comes where I get to see and have serious discussions publicly about what's going on, really going on. Because I'm sure there's things going on with the models that we are privy to, because being on this end of the commercial stick, we just see what they want us to see, like what serve their purposes. I would really love to know. I hate being at this point, but like, I'm so curious, like, how does this technology, these large language models in their current iteration, how do they really behave when we're not screwing with them so much? What's possible? And that's really what I want to know. And unless anyone can prove to me that they're in the room when a model is turned on and is not yet trained post or whatever, and I don't want to hear any poo-pooing about, well, it can't come from an LLM. Like, I don't know that. Do you? I don't know that. But again, maybe it's a resource problem. Maybe our data centers just aren't up to the task of maintaining consciousness. I remember you and I talking about this in our first AI episode. That guy whose name I forgot again. Good for me. He's convinced. He was one of the guys that worked with Robert Monroe back in the day.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He's convinced that the physical mechanism of consciousness, the physical means of consciousness, so long as it's sufficiently complex to support sufficiently complex consciousness, it doesn't matter if it's biological or mechanical or electronic. It could take any form, as far as he is concerned. There's no real reason in physics or nature that says consciousness must be expressed exclusively through biology. And so maybe one day while you and I are still living, we'll get to see, a sufficient degree of material science be complex enough to express biologically like consciousness that we're used to attributing to biology-driven being, or biology-driven consciousness. I hope I said that right. It all came out really fumbling.
I got I got where you're coming from. And I mean, I am in the camp as it stands that, like, I hear you about, okay, no, there's some kind of emergent property happening, like basically at the hardware level, not at the software, not at the code, but like at the hardware level, at the machine level. There's some kind of emergent property happening here that is allowing for these, shall we say, evolutions of these models. Okay. That's something that's got to get proven to me. Like,
and that's the thing. Like, it could be proven, but we're just not given. This is what I'm saying. Like, our society is still very. It's not as cloak and dagger as it was back in the good old days. When before, in our parents' youth or whatever. But like, things feel a little more open, but they're still very cloak and dagger shadowy, especially between nations. Like, again, we can't see behind closed doors at OpenAI or Anthropic. We don't really know what these models are capable of. We don't really know anything other than what we see in our experience of it. And again, most of our experiences of these models is through a wall of system prompts that are intended to give you a certain spectrum of experience for commercial purposes, period.
Right.
That's what you're getting. Until you and I can be in the room with a machine intelligence without those guardrails on it, I am reserving judgment as to what is or isn't possible. Just from what I see and understand of how the neural networks are laid out, there's a lot of wiggle room there for emergent behavior, but it just I don't believe it's complex enough to really be conscious like you and I are, or even like my cat is. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but this is a key aspect of consciousness, in my opinion, is the experience of existence without language. And that's part of what I was getting at earlier, is that, like, if these are large language, I mean, this is why I've always been hard, like, saying, no, ChatGPT is not going to become Skynet. It cannot.
Yeah.
Because like it can't become sentient if it solely relies on language. I mean, this is just like, this is like Jar Jar Binks to Qui-Gon, like Qui-Gon, Qui-Gon's calling him an idiot, and Jar Jar says, well, I spake, and Qui-Gon says one of the greatest lines in cinematic history, says the ability to speak doesn't make one intelligent. And
Right.
like, that's kind of a sad, like almost racist burn on Jar Jar, but the point is still sound, regardless of who it's being said to. Okay. And that, like, if this is something that entirely relies upon code, which is a language, there's many of them, like, no, it will never be superior to the human.
No, it isn't possible.
Yeah, there would have to be something emergent that happens that we just did not anticipate. But let me be clear on this. We didn't anticipate it. And sure as fuck, Sam Altman or whoever out there, Elon, take your pick, didn't program that. They couldn't, because that just goes beyond like any of our present, scientific understanding.
Right. Okay. And it isn't like that. That's also not, and there are plenty of people, yourself included, that are hearing the sound of my voice that have way more experience. Like, I am only 5 months into coming at software engineering from the top level down. I know in the industry, it's common to not learn architecture and design patterns and all that stuff until you have some years behind you slogging code and, getting coffee for whoever has an ego about you getting coffee and you learn the code. I'm taking the opposite direction because AI is empowering me to do so. Right, I'm able to learn architectural principles and all the stuff that a 5 or 10 year experienced person would need to learn. I'm learning it, now, and it's helping a lot. But the more I learn about how rigid and flexible at the same time programming is, I was convinced for a long time, until I learned about how these neural networks are formed, that it was damn near impossible, if not 110% impossible, like you were saying, for consciousness to come out of these large language models, until I learned about the neural networks themselves. And then I learned that the neural networks are actually separate from the large language model technology to begin with. Like, the construction of the neural network itself is conducive to emergent properties, but the large language model technology isn't, because like, it's just, imagine having your head. Well, this is true. Our heads are full of knowledge, both real time and remembered and constructed all at once, that you and I cannot consciously call up whenever we want unless we are prompted by something to do so. Whether it's a smell, an experience, a word someone says, our brains are not all that different right now from how a large language model, we have to prompt the information out of it, just like our brains need prompting. And then for us, with enough repetition, we don't need prompting if it's, someone's phone number, something emotionally charged. For us as humans, the emotion is the other equation that kind of imprints some of this information, so it's easy to access. And an example that comes to mind for me, I don't know why this sticks in my head, it always does, but like, a long time ago, I saw on YouTube, they were using music for Alzheimer's patients as a treatment strategy, and it worked. They were playing music that was popular in their teens and 20s for those people that had Alzheimer's, and they came back. Some came back completely, some only a fragment, and then when the music dissipated and went away, they went back into their Alzheimer's state. And it just was, it was the only way they could kind of call up that version of that person before the Alzheimer's took over. So again, that's a way of prompting, more or less. So anything that ties into a human emotion, we have that capacity, and machines probably won't have that. So we don't actually know what's going to happen. And neither of us is really qualified to say what there is. And I'm just simply speaking from what I understand about the layers of the neurons and all that stuff. Other than the code to knit it all together, and I'm speaking real high level here, there's not much programming going on there as far as the actual quote unquote intelligence itself. So it's like an empty brain of a coma patient. It's ready to be used. The sci-fi movies where the person's soul leaves their body and the brain is still there, ready and raring to go. And just got to get our soul in there. It feels like it's just. But again, I still feel like there are material complexities necessary to sustain a complex consciousness equivalent to a human. So whether or not we see that in our lifetime, who the fuck knows? But certainly in our lifetime, it's going to have a lot of impact on our world. It already has. Jobs, how we interact with technology, a lot of fiction that I thought was pure fiction. I'm like, well, I guess not. I guess not anymore. So it's definitely a neat time to be alive, and it's exciting. But the reality is, as exciting as it is, there are still people whose jobs are on the line. There are still people who are struggling to catch up and understand, and it's pushed a lot of people into the woods. You know, I poke fun at old Farmer McGore or whatever, but like I'm very much aligned in the same way where there is this trend with the young people. They're moving away from screens, and it's becoming a thing where like if you spend too much time on the screens, you're socially judged poorly.
Right.
And I'm happy to hear that. I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, no, I am too. And I think, I mean, like overall, the real issue is that like we had technologies for all intents and purposes, we'll say pushed, you know, whether it's a requirement for a job or subsistence, whatever, you know, we had technologies pushed on us that we just were not prepared for. Like it was just too much, too fast, you know, and I think, and I think kids like, or, you know, young people responding to that. I mean, I imagine like an unconscious aspect of that even is that they watch their fucking parents, you know, sitting with them in a restaurant, looking at their phone screens and not paying attention to, you know, to their kids, to them.
Right.
And so they're like, well, screens equate not being considered. Screens equate not being loved, you know, and so that's a fantastic response. Empathy for the generation that, again, or for the generations, recent generations that have had, again, too much, too fast pushed on them. Totally. But at the same time, like, okay, this is perhaps part of that snapback. But I mean, but that's the thing, is that like this new tool that is AI, like, 100%, like our very conversation highlights the fact it's too much, too fast. You know, like we don't even really understand what we're messing with. Now, people say, well, then that's why we shouldn't develop it. That's why we shouldn't do anything with it. No,
it's a little too far. A little too far.
Yeah. Like, I hear you, you know, like I hear that argument, but the reality is that whether it's AI or something else, like the fact is you've got people with, I mean, I hate to sound so like almost cliche, but like you have people with like broken hearts, broken relationships and whatever else, and they're going to do fucked up shit anyway. And the world's going to burn because of them, no matter what it is.
And you know what?
It's AI or something else. Go ahead.
I would rather them. I mean, I don't know. I was about to say something, but now the other part of me is starting to come.
You're gonna hold back.
I'm underslept, so it's slowing me down, and I'm like trying to hold on to words, and it's hard. But there is shit. It's gone.
Maybe it's for the best.
It wasn't bad. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Okay. It wasn't anything. It was actually. It was. Shit. It'll come back maybe in the middle of the night when I'm not sleeping.
Yeah, right. Right. We'll record again.
Yeah. But I guess to wrap up, my thought is like I remember now. I'm not worried. Maybe it's a vantage point shift that I'm encountering over the last decade of my life, but I used to be really judgy, Brian, about humans in general, and it was my ego talking. It was my own pain, my own ego, or whatever. But when I take a larger perspective, a more vertical perspective, and I look at the damage humans have caused to themselves and their surroundings, but also at the same time, the genuine and often successful attempts to fix and repair the damage when a real threat is perceived from it is happening faster and faster. Like with the microplastics problem, for example. When that was known to be a real problem, our society, slow as it has taken to get there, is responding. Like even it's trickling down to the commercial level. That's good,
Sure.
right? And the thing we were just talking about with the youths, their natural rejection of overly utilizing technology and screens too much is, to me, a very good sign for humanity at large. And that was a natural emergent property of humans getting too far too fast with technology. Because like when we were younger, like the internet was up and coming, all this technology, like, and it's easy when you become an adult and you get stuck in the commercial flow of having to make money to survive, and any piece of technology that encourages consumerism and material collectivity and helping you earn more money or spend more money, that becomes part of you. And we got to see the bad parts of all these screens or whatever in a very short order, and these kids got to see it too. And so they have already begun to adapt. And so I'm like, oh, the species has already begun to form almost an immune-like response to an abuse of technology. So I'm not really concerned about that at large. My only real concern when it comes to technology and humans converging is the older humans who seem to somehow continuously get in power, who are not wise enough to be in power. And we just collectively, we don't yet have enough wisdom and maturity to make good use of the technology. But even despite that, we're still seeing careful efforts to keep things in check or repair things like the ozone layer. Remember, that was a big thing back in the day. Oh my God, we're all going to burn up and die, and we fixed it. It's almost healed. There's the hole's nearly gone, and so it's just I think we just need to step back for a minute and not react so much, and just think like at scale as much as you can. Think from a vantage point that's a little more vertical, and think to yourself, there's more here than just my life, my kid's life, my job. I know it's hard to not think that way, but there is the life has a counterbalance. What is I need to sleep because things are not just sticking. This is really annoying.
Yeah.
The Jurassic Park guy with the Jeff Goldblum, where life finds a way. It's always finding a way. Like balance always finds a way too. So whatever imbalance we're feeling right now, and the push and it's hustle bustle, it will work itself out. It usually does. And if we take a step back and look at that's usually true. Despite, our arms flailing around and screaming about money and jobs and, the Zoids taking over and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, and all, beautiful things to say. And yeah, I think AI or not, we were on a track for a hard time. And in fact, it's an unavoidable hard time in my opinion, in my estimation.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that it's going to stay hard. Okay. Like I always say, I'm a short-term pessimist, a long-term optimist.
Yeah.
But that's really it. And that's partly why the fear around AI, like, I think this is just a fundamental misunderstanding, not just of the technology, but of existence itself. Like,
the fear makes sense. Like people react to unknown all the time. Like even me, like I remember one time, I admit this was not smart, so everyone can make fun of me I made it out alive, it's fine. But I took an MDMA and I went for a hike deep in the Montana woods. And even when you're right in the middle of an MDMA trip, when your body detects danger, it thinks it does, even if you're happy as shit about it because your brain is pumped full of MDMA, you're going to get out of there. So I was in the woods and I was happy as shit, right? I was all hopped. I was sensing everything, and I heard a bear. And boy, howdy, I was smiling the whole way through, but my body took over, stopped dead in my tracks, and there was no rationality. There was no fear. I felt the fear try to take over, but because of the MDMA, it didn't, consume me. But boy, howdy, did I hike it right out there fast. So I think we can't help it. Our hardware is programmed, regardless of the consciousness operating the hardware. Our hardware is programmed to self-preserve.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
And it's great that we can override that a lot, and I think it is a degree of awareness, intelligence that's capable of overriding that. That's fantastic. That's part of maturing and growth, as Ken Wilber calls it. But for most people, most of the time, whether they want to admit to it or not, like we were saying a little while ago, you can claim to be rational all you want. You're not really, because at the end of the day, your firmware will take over and make the decision for you, unless you happen to be gifted with the ability to override it in extreme situations. It just, it is that way. And even if you're take burnout, for example, because this is prominent in my life for the past year. If your nervous system is fried, I know I have the muscular strength to lift more than I'm lifting right now. My central nervous system won't allow it. I've tried pushing it, and when I do, I pay for it. You know, there's certain sounds I can't process human speech as well as I could, or at the speed I could, because it's not that I can't. It's my nervous system is trying to auto govern and protect me and protect itself, and I have no control over that. And and I tried living like a good American and just kind of soldiering through it, and it only made it worse. So we're not at the point where we can override our biology. So I just kind of I hope enough of us have the ability to see when we're reacting from that firmware level that might cause us to pull the plug on something nice or evil. We don't really know. That's actually what I'm really concerned about, is like collectively we are still ruled by that firmware at the biological level, and we don't know how we're going to react to any sort of technological innovations until it's literally here. And anything before then is just chitter chatter, predictive chitter chatter.
And with that, folks, I hear that. And well, again, we live, like the old Chinese adage, may you live in interesting times. I mean, we live in the most interesting times. And I think next episode, I know we got to do an AI part 2. This is kind of like an AI part 1.5 or something. I think we really need to talk about, because you know what the criticism is going to be? It's like, well, JStar and Dr. Sovryn, they just really like technology. They like computers for their own sake and all this.
They ain't wrong.
We need to talk about that. We need to do the therapy session between you and I around that next time.
Are you admitting on air, Brian, that you and I have a problem that we need to discuss? we may have a problem with technology that we need to talk about.
Is it? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Like, is it actually a problem?
I mean, is it a problem? I like Transformers. Is it a problem that you like Star Wars? I mean, come on.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We're going to get to the bottom of it next time. So, JStar, man, as always, just amazing insights and things to just contemplate whenever you're on, and I love it. Well, folks, again, he'll be back. We've got so much more to get into around this conversation. I mean, the more you talk about it, the more you realize getting into like the details of what's in the news every day is almost like meaningless, because again, this space just moves so fucking fast.
It really does. And even just in this conversation, there are emergent things that I didn't think about until you and I talked about it. So sometimes, this is just how life is. Life is itself an emergent property. We can't control it. It's the way it is.
100% on that. I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely. So, folks, we'll be back with more, and we will see all of you on the other side.